Logan Paul is freaking out about his defamation case against CoffeeZilla, and in his panic, he might have just screwed himself. What is up, Quaker Nation? Now, the main thing that we're talking about today has to do with some sealed documents that CoffeeZilla included in his evidence that he put forward recently in a motion to combine his defamation case with the case against Logan Paul, claiming that CryptoZoo was a scam. And it seems that Logan Paul is really scared of that sealed evidence getting released to the public, and he's so scared that he's recently filed a motion to keep that stuff confidential, but it inadvertently might have just given CoffeeZilla an opportunity to argue that it should be public, and it might go public because of Logan's actions. But before we jump into that, obligatory begging for subs.
Please subscribe. Maybe even just like the video, please. I want to silver play my head.
For real though, appreciate you guys being here and subscribing to the channel. You guys are the reason I can do this. Hope you guys are enjoying the content. Might be a slow month, but who cares? I'm having fun with this. Hope you guys are. And yeah, here, I'll even flip a coin for you guys. This is a 2015 North Carolina quarter. Call it heads or tails, heads or tails. It's tails. It's tails. You can't see it, but it's tails. It's the cool little design. So if you called tails, good job. Woo! Now you have to subscribe, have to like the video. If you got heads, get your ass next video. Okay, hope you enjoy. See ya. Now, if you don't know what's going on, I've got a video talking about this. It'll show up over here in this corner probably. But in that video, I'm really just talking about Legal Bytes video, which is what we're also talking about today. So please go check them out, subscribe. They are the ones that have been breaking the news about this case. And I'll put a link down to their videos in the description as well. But in essence, there is a defamation case against CoffeeZilla that has been put forth by Logan Paul, and at the same time, there is a class action lawsuit against Logan Paul for CryptoZoo brought on by the investors that put money into CryptoZoo. A couple weeks ago, CoffeeZilla filed a motion to essentially join the two cases together to save time and money. When he filed this motion, he also added more evidence to the case, including some very interesting texts of Logan Paul essentially admitting to him not actually doing this for defamation, but just to make CoffeeZilla's life more difficult. Just some real cartoon villain stuff. There's a price to pay. Genuinely sounds like an evil henchman talking to his comic book villain overlord. And so Logan Paul responds, that's the idea. Need to shut it down. And then his friend says, public humiliation is always more effective. To which Logan Paul says, I totally agree. Well, what I didn't know at the time and what I didn't share with you is covered in Legal Bytes' new video titled Logan Paul is panicking about worse evidence getting out. I'm going to show you the clip in a second, but the evidence that CoffeeZilla submitted to this case was not just the text messages that were shown. In fact, there were over 100 pages of exhibits that he put forth when he did this. And included in that were also exhibits that were under seal, essentially confidential except for the judge and of course, Logan Paul and CoffeeZilla and their legal teams.
But what I didn't talk about in that video was that CoffeeZilla actually had over 100 pages of exhibits attached. A lot of those were text messages, of course. But then there were other exhibits like past subpoenas that Logan Paul has issued, and the list of proposed witnesses in the two lawsuits to show that the overlap between the two cases is fairly substantial. And then there were 4 exhibits which we couldn't see because CoffeeZilla filed them under seal. What that means is that these exhibits were filed so that the judge can see them and the opposing party can see them, but the general public that has access to the public docket, basically you and me, is blocked from viewing them. This is very common in litigation, and it comes from the fact that American courts have actually a very liberal discovery standard. If the information that's being requested by the other side is relevant to the issues, then chances are you're going to have to give that information up. And then you can't always control what they are going to do with that information. So then you might ask, what happens in litigation when this highly sensitive information needs to be turned over to the opposing party? Well, that's when parties can seek what's called a protective order. A protective order happens where the parties go back and forth over categories that they think should be kept confidential between the parties and the judge.
So as Legal Bytes said, they put some of this evidence under seal, and they do that to keep it private because it could be medical records or something talking about children, things like that. I think the biggest thing here is just that CoffeeZilla is doing an excellent job at playing this by the book. In Legal Bytes' own words, he's doing everything properly here. Like, him and his team should get a little bit of an applause because this is an absolute palate cleanser in comparison to the Carl Jobst Billy Mitchell legal battle that had just ended shortly. And so now you may be wondering, Quinthio, What's going on? You said that Logan Paul was panicking. This is all confidential stuff. What's the dealio? Well, of course, Logan Paul's team and himself get to look at what is under that seal because it's only unavailable to us, the public. And what he sees in this is freaking him out to such a degree that he has started to speculate and is getting a bit conspiratorial. Here's what I mean by that.
He says that there are 3 documents that Paul marked as confidential when he produced them in discovery to CoffeeZilla. And then he describes them, but it's all redacted, so we can't see them. Okay, normal stuff so far. But then Paul says, hey, these documents are attached as exhibits to CoffeeZilla's recent motion, and he clearly did that as a dirty litigation tactic just to harm, embarrass, and prejudice me. So whatever evidence this is, clearly Logan Paul thinks that it's embarrassing, it's prejudicial, it's harmful to either his case or his reputation, one way or the other. Specifically, he says this: although the redacted documents were attached as exhibits to defendant's recent motion, it is apparent that those materials have no relevance to the motion or defendant's arguments, and instead were almost certainly filed for the sole and improper purpose of providing defendants with an excuse to advocate for their public disclosure in order to harm and embarrass the plaintiff. It is apparent that defendant's motivating purpose for introducing these materials into the judicial record was to cause harm and prejudice to plaintiff.
So main point number 1, it is very clear that Logan Paul is talking about what is sealed. It could have been construed that maybe he was speaking about any of the other evidence that was provided by CoffeeZilla, like the text messages that we have gone over previously. But he specifically points out that it is the confidential exhibits, so we know for sure that he's speaking about those, and those are the ones that he's worried about. Now, like Legal Bites points out, there's a lot of stuff that is currently, completely redacted, so we don't even know the specifics of it, but it seems that the main argument that Logan Paul's team has come up with in this situation is that none of the evidence that they're specifically talking about, that being the stuff that's under seal, has any relevancy to CoffeeZilla filing the motion to conjoin the 2 cases. Immediately in my brain, from the person that has never even looked at a bar exam, I can kind of understand this point. Like, let's say it's directly related to the defamation case and the argument being made there. Legally, I guess that would make sense that because it has nothing to do with the motion he filed to conjoin the cases, and it's just specifically about that case, that it wouldn't make sense for him to include it there. I can kind of see that argument, but at the same time, we know for a fact that Logan is scared and that this is more of a knee-jerk reaction because he didn't do this properly. What I mean by that is this motion to preserve confidentiality, all that good stuff that Logan's doing, it seems like he kind of skipped procedure, and in doing so is wasting people's time again, which seems to be his MO based off of what had come out in his texts previously. In essence, some of the information and exhibits, evidence that they are presenting that they're keeping confidential, if one of these legal teams wants some of that evidence to be public, there is an actual process that they can go through where they speak just with the other team and make an argument, like through emails and stuff, basically saying, hey, we want to make sure that this is public. And they're trying to see if they can come to an agreement without bringing this in front of the judge, because judges are very busy, as Legal Bites points out.
It is anticipated that defendants will argue that these materials, by virtue of having been filed by defendants in connection with their recent motion to stay or transfer proceedings, are now judicial records that should be unsealed due to the presumption of public right of access to court records. But I don't think that's the case, because CoffeeZilla can just contest the confidential status of the information at any time anyway. He doesn't have to slime his way through some sort of a back door in order to get that done. The protective order that's in place for this lawsuit outlines steps for disputing the confidentiality designation. This is often referred to as a meet and confer process. And the purpose of the meet and confer process is to try to limit the number of times when the parties need to involve the judge in these very discovery disputes. Judges are notoriously busy, and so they don't like seeing their time wasted by having to referee discovery disputes if the parties can resolve it themselves. Typically, the side that's bringing the issue to the judge is going to want to also show the judge, hey, we tried to resolve this issue before involving you. And they'll do that by attaching an exhibit with copies of emails back and forth, either substantively going through the issues or at the very least referring to phone calls where they did that over the phone. But noticeably here, I don't see anything like that attached.
So like she said, typically go through the process, talk to each other back and forth. And when Logan Paul filed this motion, there was no exhibits that he included showing that he went through and did his due diligence and had this conversation, had this back and forth with CoffeeZilla's team, which means that on top of the evidence that CoffeeZilla has already provided indicating that Logan is happy to waste everybody's time and is just willing to do this to ruin the lives of the people who have wronged him or just do this to make CoffeeZilla's life harder, he's just adding more fuel to the fire that is burning his case to the ground. And again, it plays more to that panic response because you would expect, with the knowledge that this other information has been presented, that being his text messages, you know, him calling himself a petty billionaire and how that's going to look to a jury, judge, or the people whose time is being wasted. I'm sorry for hitting you, baby. You would expect that at least his team would go, hey, let's do our due diligence and try not to make this look worse for us, since you've already been proven based off this evidence to be in the market for wasting people's time. But at the bare minimum, that information wasn't included in the motion, which does look bad. Maybe they did have the conversation, but it's hard to believe that, since it would only provide more defense or more benefit of the doubt to them had they included it in their motion. But now we get to the hilarious part of this motion that Logan Paul has filed. In doing so, he has actually made it more possible for CoffeeZilla to get this information, to get this evidence that's behind the seal, released to the public.
And the thing is, if CoffeeZilla wasn't planning to argue that these documents should be unsealed, he's likely going to at least want to respond to this motion. And as of the filming of this video, he hasn't responded yet. But if I were him, I would at least make the argument to the court now that the issue has been put out there that, well, hey, since we're talking about it, yeah, this shouldn't be confidential. And the public has a right to see how its judicial system is operating. And that includes seeing something as important as this information.
That last point Legal Bites makes about CoffeeZilla coming forward, that is the best part of this entire thing. Y'all want the textbook definition of the Streisand effect? There it is. Logan Paul, in filing this motion against confidential documentation and exhibits, evidence, whatnot, that CoffeeZilla and his legal team have at no point ever indicated that they plan to make public, he has created a legitimate opportunity that CoffeeZilla wouldn't have had originally, outside of him actually having to present it and file it himself, to make the argument that it should be public for whatever reason it is. Now, Legal Bites points out we actually don't know who would win this argument here because we can't see any of the evidence, as it's all been redacted. So Logan Paul could have a good point here. I'm not going to dismiss that. But right now, we're just looking at how he's reacted to this and the procedures that they've gone through, and some of them that they've skipped, to indicate that maybe this is a knee-jerk panic reaction, in which case he has actually just made it worse for himself. In an effort to conceal this information, like the Streisand effect, he may have inadvertently made sure that it will go public. But I'm very interested to hear what your guys' thoughts are. Any lawyers in the comments? I'm surprised you have time to be here. Thank you for spending time here, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're an armchair lawyer, I'd love to hear from you and argue with you in the comments as well. But that does conclude the video. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing if you want more. Like the video to help me out, get this in front of more people, get that sweet, sweet silver play button. And if you guys are interested, want to play games similar to some of the ones you see on the wall, come join the Discord. I leave a pinned comment, usually linking to my Discord. It will also be in the description below. But that's it. I'll see you guys later. Adios, peace, bye. Do all those things. See you. Bye.